Everyone for coming down. Hope you're having a good afternoon and enjoying Singapore. I'm Alex Lipton. I manage ecosystem growth and business development at SSV Labs. We're the core contributors to SSV Network. We're pioneering DVT, which is distributed validator technology. First and foremost, closest to my face? Perfect. First and foremost, thank you to the Epic Web3 team. You guys have been fantastic. Brilliant day today, so kudos to you guys. The talk I want to speak to everyone about today is DVT really is the missing link and how we can help really accelerate the growth of regulated ETPs and ETFs that involve staked and maybe one day restaked Ethereum as well. So I think this is really a big paradigm shift in the type of staking product that's going to be out there. And really, if we take a long-term view, say that the next 3 to 5 years, I think this is going to consume a lot of the staked and possibly even restaked ETH. So I think it's time as an industry, we think about the type of challenges that we need to solve and what we could do to bring institutions on board and ultimately bring the next 100 million, maybe 1 billion users into Web3 and staking and restaking. Okay. The SSV Labs team is celebrating passing the 1.4 million ETH milestone. This is obviously massively surpassing even the most bullish expectations of the core team since we went live on mainnet last year. Really fantastic to see a lot of projects, really a lot of staking service providers, LSTs, LRTs, really utilize DVT, which is the next generation of staking technology to really provide that bulletproof security for their staking operations. But that's all really thanks to our fantastic community, some of which are in the room today. Really, like I said, making sure the product is maturing, providing valuable feedback, and ultimately securing their validators with DVT. So that 1.4 billion ETH is representing about $3.4 billion of US dollars, just to give you a sense of scale. So this is really gaining a lot of product market fit. And a lot of legacy validators who are setting up in the traditional setup are now being run in a DVT way. What I want to share with everyone today is how DVT can help institutions really provide that safe experience for their end users and really accelerate the adoption of staking products. So up to 30% APY boost SSV is offering through our incentivized mainnet program. That's providing the enhanced economics to really help transition legacy validators over to DVT. So it's a really incredible, a powerful program to incentivize that movement. So for those of you in the room who are wondering, what the hell is DVT? This is the first time I've heard about it. I'll give you a little TLDR. So the core idea is for an Ethereum validator node, how do you take the validator key, split it into multiple key shares, and take those key shares, assign them to independent, non-trusted node operators who collaborate to run the validator node together. So essentially, if I have 4 key shares, I assign them to different operators and build a cluster. And if one goes down, maybe due to client failure, like say Nethermind goes down, or Microsoft blows up one day, no big problem whatsoever because you still have 3 out of 4 within your cluster who can continue doing all the attestations and blob proposals. So really making sure there's no single point of failure whatsoever. But tying everything together from a technology point of view is a QBFT consensus and threshold signatures. So it's really a combination of technologies, what SSV is doing, and really powering the next generation of staking products. So with introductions out the way, what I want to do is really to take a step back first and foremost and really just show you where we've come from as an industry, the type of challenges that we've overcome, because I think this is going to set the context well for institutions and the type of challenges that they're confronting and how some of our past learnings and experiences can help institutions on their journey along the way. So as you know, Ethereum started as a proof of work chain, and with the merge in 2022, we saw the advent of all the OG LSTs and staking service providers really come into the scene and provide that backbone, the infrastructure, and necessary setup, which is really why we're all in the room today, and the whole industry has emerged out of that. SSV was launched in 2023, but in reality, the story goes back a few years before that. We initially got a grant from the Ethereum Foundation to do the deep research into DVT, when it was a theoretical concept. We took the design of DVT, but through a lot of iteration and battle testing, took it to the next level and built a DVT network, which we feel is the best implementation of DVT. So with that, SSV has been a big beneficiary of the LRT FI boom. So really, doubling down on the thesis that staking and restaking in the future is going to be a long tail of staking products, really giving end users the power and sovereignty to decide what to stake, how to stake, who to stake with. And there's going to be many flavors of staking product going forward, which is really going to be utilizing DVT and different validator technologies intensively to build their products. In 2024, this year, obviously a big moment when the USA spot ETFs were approved. So actually, a few years ETFs have been approved in different jurisdictions, but USA is obviously the big one because a lot of regulators globally closely follow what's happening in US markets and follow accordingly. So with that, that will be the basis of the talk today. But before diving into the ETF space, it's important to look at some of the vectors of centralization that we see in staking. We see, I just pulled out some high-level statistics here that amongst the million validators powering the Ethereum network today, about 52% is controlled by just 5 companies, 50% located in just 3 countries alone. And from a client point of view, we see dominant clients. So we're possibly running into a supermajority issue. So these things are obviously very important to look at, but because the market dynamics within the Ethereum space itself means that we naturally converge to an equilibrium of centralization. SSV as a solution at DVT is really helping to mitigate and alleviate some of these issues, and all else remain equal. We'd really be in a good path to overcome some of these centralization vectors going forward because of the contributions of SSV and DVT. However, not all is going to remain equal because ETFs are coming thick and fast. And the way that a lot of these institutions are looking to possibly adopt staking is that decentralization and some of these ideas and the core ethos of Ethereum isn't front and center of their thinking. So it's actually imperative as an industry and for everyone sitting in the room and involved in restaking that we really guide the narrative and really help institutions who want to adopt staking and restaking, but do it in a way that really builds the sustainability of Ethereum staking going forward. So what I'd like to talk about now is the role of SSV in the ETF space. So I've actually gone ahead and done some deep research into the number of ETFs that are holding spot ETH globally. We see that there's about 40 products in different jurisdictions, but actually only 10 of which are participating in securing the network. Like I said before, in the US, staking's not available, not allowed by regulators, but there's actually a few jurisdictions that help, that enable staking, which can give us an idea of where things are shaping up. To give you a sense of scale as well, of the 10 staking products, that's representing about $1 billion that's institutional money and regulated ETPs that are staking already. So that's about 1.2% staked ETH concentration. If you want to break down some of the geographies, there's a number of jurisdictions here which are allowing staked ETH products, allowing spot ETH products already. But obviously, USA is really the granddaddy. That's the most deep, liquid capital markets in the world. And as expected, it's really consuming a lot of the TVL. So it's incredibly important that staking is going to be allowed in the USA going forward because from a regulator's point of view, their main motive is to make sure that end investors, retail investors, don't go into the unregulated markets and get burned. And if staking is not enabled on the ETFs, then it's going to be a big problem for them. So they're thinking very deeply about how to enable staking, but in a truly safe way that they can distribute these products. So it's coming. The opportunity is there. But it's, if you take a long-term view, with the right, measures in place, it's going to happen. Formatting issues on the slide, but I had some nice emojis of the flags that have already enabled the staking ETPs. But anyway, we have 2 in Canada, Sweden, and Switzerland. Germany's got 1, and we have some other offshore jurisdictions as well. But really, in terms of staking, it's a drop in the pond. If you compare that against Lido's TVL, it's really tiny, 1 billion versus 23 billion. So really, we see very few ETPs actually participating in securing the network today. So for ETF issuers that want to actually enable staking once it's allowed, there's really a laundry list of considerations that they've got to keep in mind. For those in the room that maybe have launched an LRT or launching one tomorrow, it's a vastly different set of things that need to be considered when you work with institutions. And they do a lot of due diligence in order to get there on many different vectors. But I really want to pick out about 5, which I think SSV could really help with DVT, not only to accelerate the adoption, but make sure that investors, particularly retail investors, could do it in a safe way. And the first thing is with the regulatory framework. So speaking to some ETF issuers already, and one thing that when they interface with regulators, they get asked all the time is, how do you protect your investors from slashing and offline risk? And one thing that they can counter with is, we adopt DVT, and through that, we have no single point of failure. Perhaps we use multiple entities or use different data centers, different cloud providers, or different client combinations, and thereby we're never going offline, we're not getting slashed, and we're not exposing our investors to some of these risks. So that's incredibly important for giving regulators peace of mind in approving these products. The second is staking services. So obviously, ETF provider needs to pick partners that they trust, really with the SLAs, the customer service, and all the bells and whistles that they expect from a provider. With SSV, we have over 950 operators registered on the network, most of which are the large institutional staking providers, the big brands who are not going away anytime soon. Not only can they pick any operator in their marketplace, but there's also an array of DVT APIs, so actual product built by some of our partners that under the hood is running SSV, so really utilizing DVT and really benefiting from some of the benefits. The third one is a really interesting one for me, and that's liquidity. So ETFs and ETPs are continually traded products, which means that they need to fulfill redemptions. Obviously, when you stake ETH, and if there's a stress event, there's a withdrawal queue, and it's hard to fulfill those redemptions. So they need to have the right liquidity in place. So that can come in the form of either LSTs or tokenized validators, which we're seeing emerge as well. Then when doing that specific due diligence on LSTs, whether the regulator allows it or not, but they can assess, is the use of DVT there? How are they managing their operators? It's an incredibly important consideration. The next one along is custody solutions. So like staking service providers, they need to do the right due diligence and make sure the custody provider provides the array of tools and staking services which you'd expect. And with SSV, we have the integrations with some of the leading qualified and regulated custodians. With OFAC-compliant relays and validator setup, so the regulator may mandate that, look, you need to make sure you're running OFAC-compliant relays with SSV, we're relay agnostic. You can load those up on any of your operators within your cluster. And they also might have a requirement, for example, the regulator in Indonesia, say if you're issuing an ETF in Indonesia, you might need to onshore all your validators locally. So with SSV, you really have the ability to customize how you want your validator to run. So tapping into future risks, I think Petra is going to be massively important for the institutions and ETF providers. So with that, we have a new EIP that's increasing the max effective balance up to 2,048 ETH. So for staking service providers themselves, they can really benefit from the decrease costs in running many, many validators. They can consolidate it into one. But with this much ETH on one validator comes a lot of responsibility. So it's all the more important to secure it, especially using technologies like DVT. But the second point here as well, which I want to make everyone aware that when you miss rewards today, the penalties are not actually that big. It doesn't hurt too much. But when you have 2,048 ETH on a validator, it's really, really going to hurt. Everyone's going to feel the pain. With SSV, you're going to make sure that you have that 100% uptime or close to it. Make sure you're not missing rewards and really maximize the yield that you can get on these ETPs and ETFs. So, to conclude and tie everything together, ETPs and ETFs are well and truly here. They're coming in thick and fast and getting approved really on a monthly basis. However, today, due to regulation, very few are actually participating in securing the network. We think going forward that regulators will have to enable it at some point so people don't participate in the unregulated market. And with that, it's really imperative for us as an industry to work together and make sure we ensure institutions sticking to the core ethos of Ethereum, really providing that necessary decentralization, but ultimately letting investors and retail investors participate staking in a compliant and also a safe way so we can bring the next batch of users and flow into the ecosystem. So, yeah, thank you, everyone.